This is Camden, Weber Camden, Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States, Earth, Milky Way. You are in an abusive relationship. It is not normal for someone to text you or send you a message with a video where they motion towards the camera as if they are pointing a gun at the camera and pull the trigger and threaten, I could shoot you in the street and I wouldn't lose any voters. That was a time of escalation in this relationship. That was a time of escalation. When you asked the person who has been abusing you, well, if I let you come and be here and I make myself vulnerable to you, if I take you into my confidence, will you leave without a fight? That was a scary thing for you to have to come up with the will to ask. That was already a red flag that you were headed for an abusive relationship. The initiations were already underway. He had been trolling for you for some time. But he eventually took control, coercive control of your world, of the world around you. By weaving a degradation of your expectations. Of what being a human being means. You are in an abusive relationship. When someone tells you they've done something bad and laughs about it and says they were smart to do it, even when you look at them with trying to laugh horror, trying to look like you understand and smile shock. Why are you saying this? Why are you... We're about to step outside of this vehicle, and I don't know you super well, and I'm places outside. And I think you're intimating that you might sexually assault them. He was wrong to put you in that position. He was wrong to put you in that position. And have you ever been let down by a hero before? Have you been broken by a hero before? Have you been broken by someone who lets themselves be your hero before? Now? Before now, I mean. Maybe in 2nd grade. Maybe in nursery school. Maybe in high school or college. You are in an abusive relationship. It's not your fault. But let's be clear, he seems to be aware of the behavior. He seems to like the way things are. And the trajectory. Just fine. But I want to ask, do you remember what it was like before they started sending 17 things through the space where 3 tried to go every day? Do you remember what it was like before he called people coming to this country for a better life rapists? Do you realize that when he called our neighbors and our guests and our fellow citizens rapists, existence within the habitat that might not puke us away. We can't afford the distractions of death cults. You had plans for the last few years. America had plans for the last few years that were stolen. If there were evidence of the 2020 election being stolen, you would have seen it by now. Because let's remember, from the first quips from Trump and Giuliani about theft of an election and claimed evidence, months of Groundhog's Days somehow led to not Antifa, not Black Lives Matter, but the supporters of Donald Trump. Hood winked. When you scream fire in a theater, you stress the exits. You juke and doom the ability for the arteries of one's mind or one's theater to safely exit. You create a panic, and a panic that you believe you can steer. Donald Trump did not just cry fire in a crowded theater. He coaxed and amplified and directed into the amphitheater of democracy a projection of pure falsehood. He told us that he would keep us in suspense before his first win that gave him the presidency. And his refusal to adhere before the election should have cost him eligibility. He should have been shown the door. But we were afraid. We let it happen. Agencies like the Secret Service seem to have had points of catastrophic failure for the fostering of democracy in America. That seems to be an ongoing problem. There are traitors adherent to corporate rule and adherent to the Ku Klux Klan. Period. We are dealing with widespread corruption, and the worst among us. We are dealing with people who want to gather lynch mobs. That is who Donald Trump is. That is why he gathered America together with a lie to try to bull vault into a second term as presidency through fraud. And he came close. His reality distortion field still holds millions of people believing in a truth that is him and character and beyond fact. There are millions now, I believe, who think that we're in a movie. If you're encouraged to enter magical thinking by your god or your hero, wouldn't you be a fool not to oblige? Is that not part of worship? Apparently it is, because hoodwinked millions are. The incredible depravity to treat people like vermin in the way that he is, to further plunder and cement totalitarian, theocratic, violent, racist rule. They're banning The Handmaid's Tale because they're planning The Handmaid's Tale. And that's what it looks like for all of us to be in an abusive relationship with the same person and his gang of vicious, mercenary, con artists and thugs. It's not a question of people not liking the murderer. It's a question of someone having a pathology that has left a trail of over 1 million people dead. It's about someone who thinks that it is righteous for them to run after being exposed as having said, I just grabbed them by the genitals. I'm a star. I can do that. We were duped and fooled. On the highway, stopping for a bit of food, I might sit for a bit and warm myself and have some cider. And in the midst of it, what if I am battered and a hood is thrown over me? Or in some way I don't realize that, maybe for a minute, maybe because I'm knocked out or because the darkness, and I think, but the point being that instead of the hoods of our eyes winking, that someone else winks out reality, or winks out freedom, or winks out autonomy or agency or safety. And potentially, like as our eyelids, someone has pulled hoods over our eyes, a hood that is false, a falsehood, and we can be trapped under that falsehood. If I remember when I was when I was 5, maybe 4. I must have been 4 years old, 3 or 4, and I asked my mother. I remember we were outside in the backyard in the garden, and I asked her, "Mom, is it vagina or budgina?" And she informed me that it was vagina with a V. And I was like, okay. And now, while my mom has a mischievous sense of humor, this case, and in such cases, she is direct and honest and factual and not clinical, but clear. And so she just said, oh, it's vagina with a B. But had her mischief carried to pranking me, that would have made her a very different person. But had she done that, I might have gone for some time under the falsehood that women have vaginas. And maybe it would cause embarrassment at some point on a date, or maybe in health class, or but there's a story that occurs, something happens from this point of a prank or a falsehood or a lie. And the point is, that's not really that precarious, but an inciting element that turns things to go that way, as in, that's not where the street is, that's where the street is. So that we, instead of running and going across a calm street, we go instead here thinking it's clear, but it's a busier street, and we get clobbered because we were misdirected and didn't know to look for something because we'd been hoodwinked. The point is, falsehood is deadly. Subterfuge, sabotage can just be one letter out of place that changes everything. And we know that. And so I'm also asking, do you remember that? Do you remember that you deserve truth? Do you remember that you deserve to be spoken to in a language that you also own, that you deserve to have conversations with a common language, that you deserve to have conversations with people speaking in good faith? Do you remember? Maria Konnikova has looked into how we learn and how we think. And she's looked into con artists as well. And an essential offering from her work, it seems to me, around this, is that we need trust. That being exploited and conned and tricked makes us feel like, I need to like squirrel away, and like I need to hide my trust away. It's a vulnerability. Like, being trusting is dangerous. Being trusting, that's a sucker's game. And that, let's chuck it on back to 2001. That is how the terrorists win. The mind virus is the falsehood. The mind virus is white supremacy. The mind virus is falsehoods built to degrade human beings things and install power in some over others. The falsehood is a weapon. It doesn't have to be, but it is. And it's time to recalibrate, because there was a time when you recognized, and stood up for yourself and would have a boundary and say, nope, I'm not coming to that, not interested. Nope, no, you're not welcome here. Nope. Oh, shh, not answering the door. Locked. You know how. It's not just about doors. Or maybe it's all about doors. You know but we are in a deadly abusive relationship. It's true that there are cycles. We can observe that every 80 years or so, extremism maybe rankles. But it's not necessarily clockwork. And it's not necessarily inevitable. And in fact, that's what Never Again is about. The problem in focusing on only, it's important. It's vital and important to give witness to and honor how you have been treated poorly. How, in fact, we are in an abusive relationship. We have to remember. We have to remember that before he started calling our neighbors rapists and making terroristic fun of people with disabilities and threatening to kill people and calling for his supporters to physically, violently beat people who showed up in good faith as protesters, or showed up in good faith as reporters, or showed up in good faith in any capacity. But the point now is about realizing that we have not been apprehending the falsehood all along the way, in terms of not seeing the devastating story that prints on the background of these optics. Because in our Sudetenland of the most important documents grabbed, our private parts grabbed by someone who simply takes them and for months hangs on to our nation's most vulnerable, private, compromising, delicate, personal, precarious information and parts. And we are in suspense. Do I get to have your hands not on me now? Do we get to have your hands not on us now? Because you're raising your hand saying, I have absolute authority. But whether by hook or crook or schnook, he has been playing a role of, oh, everything that I'm doing is okay. And while doing all kinds of batshit crazy, clearly, essentially evil, racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, terroristic, anti-gay, anti-trans, Nazi-esque statements and actions and threats. We see something worse here. What we see is someone who wants to win at all costs. And that means that's a vector that goes forever and a vector that goes forever. I don't think he's capable of stopping because he's outrunning prosecution and because he continues to break laws and threaten to break laws. What else does it mean when someone who already broke their oath of office once refuses to admit it and comes back? And do we know the depth of the abusive relationship we're in when the announcement of an insurrectionist is not met with laughter and, haha, right, we'll see you in court? Then instead of treating him like some eligible bachelor who announced he's interested in the White House in 2024, oh, Donald Trump has announced that he's seeking the almost no news outlets treated him as the news should treat him. The former president, disgraced, who broke his oath of office in contravention of the 14th Amendment, has threatened a run for the White House. That's reality. He's a criminal, and he broke the biggest rules we have. He tried to cheat the election. We are getting good at recognizing projection now. But that's what we're dealing with. And projection that is practiced and strategic. Because after a solid drenching in lies once once in office, the very first thing that he did was to send his press secretary in essentially an ambush, a surprise early first press conference, calls everyone into the press room to surprise excoriate them for you've all been dishonest and horrible. And so the story is, Daddy's angry. And with a massive projection about holding the media accountable for dishonesty, they hoisted a massive lie that Trump's 2017 crowd was not a third the size of Obama's inauguration, but bigger, when the photos showed obviously. Sort of like if there were a photo of Martha Stewart and a photo of Donald Trump, and he refused to recognize that they were not both photos of him. We're dealing with a lie. And we're dealing with a lie that is massively important. And that gets to the level of the Orwellian final command of, you will accept the bidding of what we say your eyes see. We will be your eyes and ears, the state says, and so the nation adheres. That's what we're looking at when the press secretary, in his first order of business from the president, is to concoct a hoax of, I'm so mad at you and I've got this proof here and you should, and it was the biggest in the whole world ever in person and around the world, and oh, you were terrible and you should have been nice to him like they were at the CIA, the standing ovation, and you all just lied. And you put Donald Trump on notice about, you say he's dishonest sometimes. Well, we're putting you on notice that it goes both ways. The idea of symmetricality is important here. But in all of this, the point is, it's not your fault, but it's also maybe it's not his fault. Because, let's be honest, I mean, before Donald Trump, we had heard falsehoods. Before Donald Trump, I mean, the falsehood certainly showed this. The falsehood appeared in the Nixon administration, certainly. He certainly donned the falsehood and wore that as an identity. But we have a real master of the falsehood now, in terms of someone who is not able to generate, does not have, or has neutered empathy and shame. Because when one says something horrible and people around them say, what? What did you say that again? someone who recognizes those kinds of reactions might say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was a bad joke," or "Oh, I didn't say, you know, eat my I said eat my shaving cream like whipped cream. It's a little fluffy, but it's still flavorful. I said eat my shaving cream like whipped cream. It's a little too shaving creamy, but it's whipped cream. But eat it." That's what I was saying. We don't want to hurt people. We'll even be stupid. We'll even say, "Oh, I..." And when insulting someone, if for some reason we haul off and do something shitty and say something shitty, and we are called on it, and we realize, "Oh, whoa, our shame, our human decency and empathy makes us say like, oh, makes us rethink. If only because of the relationship of the people that we're having, that it makes us say, whoa, okay, maybe I was too brusque. Maybe I shouldn't have called our neighbors something horrible. Maybe I could, if I really have an issue here that I need to discuss and it's this level, I can actually take it seriously enough to be a little bit careful with my language so that I don't set off a chain reaction that I don't even understand. But this is the thing. Somehow, the world that understands Mission Impossible and moments and items of the greatest import to national security and ticking time bombs and the gravity of law and order, has been shown to have nothing when it comes to the ability to simply say, no! No, you don't ever talk to us like that. No, you don't talk to us like that. No one talks to Americans like that! No one! No one! Where is the voice that is able to speak not with cruelty, but with boundary? Where? Because we need that voice. We need it now. Cruelty isn't boundary. Cruelty is havoc. Havoc is not a boundary. Havoc is malevolence. And we have essentially we've not really changed course, having heard Trump talk to his supporters like he thinks he's John Wick, calling himself retribution, calling himself a warrior, and promising to install a new weaponized army. We are looking at slaughter of millions of people. We are looking at erasure of indigenous people. We're looking at slaughter of people who don't look like white men and the people they want to have in their beds. We're looking at horrific maiming harm that America our people, like, may not survive or recover from. We may not exist after this, not as in the country might fold. We might be all gone. Because the lynch mob is in the building now. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Alex Jones, these are lynch mobbers. It is the bandwidth of how they speak. It is about not just the degradation, but the corruption of anything that holds us together. It is the corruption of trust. It is the Nellie Olson attack upon actual kindness, not propriety, not niceness, but kindness. Kindness has accountability and boundaries. Propriety has rules and knives. And is not safe. Propriety is a weapon of capitalism. Propriety is how 3 cops watched 1 cop kill George Floyd. Propriety is being used to being treated as or less important than property. And the problem with the level of malice and embracing of falsehood as worldview, it is Pandora's box upon human trust. We have an abscess event. We have a Nazi who essentially let us know that he wouldn't leave and then tried to make it happen and then has lied about that. And when CNN and all of the other news outlets should have been saying the 14th Amendment is only one of the things that stands in the way of the announcement Donald Trump thinks he made today, when they instead said, hey, don't mind the shit and blood on his pants from the last time he was here. Don't worry about that. He seems to have really, I know he's banging a little hard on the door, but yeah, I know the restraining order is filed and we're, but I think he keeps screaming, but he's screaming he wants to make an honest woman out of you, baby! It's not CNN's role. It's not the media's role to say, oh gosh, it's inevitable. Here he comes. I think it's happening. No. What that literally is that there are people who refused to say no to Donald Trump. And there are people now who are refusing to say no to Donald Trump. We need to be able to say no to our predator. Because it's not just about the abuse. It's not just about, it's not just about you did bad thing is bad, and I was disrespected by bad thing. I feel a little bit bad because you were mean. What we're talking about here, let's take Florida's literally terroristic and genocidal pro-enslavement education attack. Because it is an attack. This is a terrorist attack from school board and governor's mansion in Florida upon the people of Florida and upon the United States. Because we got through a civil war to end the abomination of chattel slavery that was far worse than we will ever really be able to understand, unless maniacs drag us back to that nonsense in the same way they've dragged us back to child labor. But the point is, it's not just about you screamed at somebody and they cried and their night was ruined and they broke this and everything and bad. It's about, especially when there are plans making these events happen, it's not just about the bad things. It's about what that takes. That we are traumatizing long before we allowed the NRA and the Ku Klux Klan to treat our high schools and schools like target ranges. We still were in a space of crushing creativity, of indoctrination into being broken for capitalism and broken for warfare. And it is not difficult to find the actual history. The lakes that we can swim in to find buried Black Wall Streets that white terrorists destroyed and covered are waiting. The communal pools meant to foster happiness and safety and peace, which they did, until white, racist terrorists ruined it for everyone. The history is there. The history of redlining is there. The history of saying we need to keep people uneducated by folks like Ronald Reagan and people who advised him. This is indoctrination and subjugation. And we are allowing news organizations that could be doing a better job of standing true to their task, especially at a moment when someone is actually calling them the enemy of the people. The point is not just that it's abominable for kids to have to fight for something to eat at school. That we punish kids if their parents have issues, whatever we think of the issues, that prevent them from having food for their family. That ultimately we are built and are being re-entrenched to be rebuilt to adore and accept and love punishment. To gleefully internalize fascism it's also known as surrender. And no one talks to America like that. No one talks to humans like that. It's wrong. We have a failure to negotiate. We have a failure to negotiate someone who has broken his own and our executive function and is coming back to take the rest of us away from us. We are the reality distortion feeling. We are the reality distortion feeling. The feeling is real and the real is real. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. The fielding is real and the real is real. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. Yeah, so it needs to be way concise, way consolidated. Right? Like, because I think maybe it's just about the sections and the things that I maybe need to meditate and feel it. And rather than pushing, I am tired. And I want to let's do We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. The falsehood will demonize your sensitivity. The falsehood will claim the press is our enemy. To cry fake news yet preempt all remedy displays false identity. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. The fielding is real and the real is real. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. The falsehood will tell you intuition's faulty. The falsehood will tell you facts aren't factual actually. I think, let's see if I go to, come on. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. Fielding. falsehood will demonize your sensitivity. The falsehood will claim the press is our enemy. To cry fake news yet preempt all remedy displays false identity. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. The fielding is real and the real is reeling. We are the reality distortion fielding. We are the reality distortion fielding. Falsehood will tell you intuition's faulty. The falsehood will tell you facts aren't factual, actually. Be one. I mean, yeah, I'm just, for now, let's say that I'm gonna do the songs.